charters on and did not have anybody on from the private sector. So we do, and I support, private sector in terms of school choice as well. And that's the sector where parents are able to get vouchers to send their students to a private school. But when we talk about school choice, we know that most of our students, the Black and brown students, low income students, are exercising charter when it comes to school choice. So that's why this conversation was framed. But I support all school choice. If we could get the word out more about vouchers that are available to parents that will allow them to take advantage and go to a school like Chittard or Cathedral or Brebeuf, those private schools, and I'm all for it. In 2016, a survey found that 64% of African Americans supported a tax credit for individuals and corporate donations that pay for scholarships to help low-income parents send their students to private school. So we know in our community, we support choice, period. That in terms of parents want choice. I'll put it that way. Parents want choice. But there's always the powers to be there trying to change that narrative. But for the most part, we know that African American parents do support or want to have that ability to change, to allow their child to go to where they want to go. So you kind of leaned us or kind of pushed us in that direction of funding. So we're going to go there now. So most of the opposition to charters is a result of that narrative that charter schools take away dollars from the public schools. And so can we talk a little bit about that? Like when a student leaves, is that true that public schools are losing money as a result of students transferring and going to charter schools? Let's talk about that and have that conversation and kind of dispel that myth. A lot of it's also around count day, where when a student goes to a charter school and then after count day, the charter school will suspend that student and send them back to IPS or whatever the public school district is, and the dollars don't follow them back. So let's have that conversation and just kind of dispel some of those myths that are out there regarding funding being taken away from charters because students are leaving public school district. I mean, taken away from the districts because people are going to charters. What do you guys think about that?
Let me say this. So if those that oppose charter schools ask the question about charter schools taking money away from public schools, won't you ask the question, why are charter schools around? They came around because that public school obviously were failing children, and parents came together, which people don't like. They don't like parents coming together and making a choice for their children. And then charter schools came about. So if public schools weren't failing, then the charter school that they built around the corner or nearby that pulls the kids, they wouldn't lose money. I mean, there's no charter schools popping up in Carmel. None of us built our schools in Carmel. Last time I checked, or Zionsville, right?
Right.
So
right.
They're not asking that question, but they're asking the question in areas where it's predominantly black children and students of color, right? And so we're taking their money away when in reality, you're taking away the dreams and hopes of black and brown children to be successful. So let's ask that question.
Let's ask that question.
So, I getting to the money is cool. You can, the allotment of money, but we taking away your money and you took away dreams of children. So
the money follows the kid, right?
Right.
And so if, before I was a homeowner, when I moved from one apartment, I didn't keep paying rent to the old apartment complex, right? So why wouldn't the money follow the child to support the child's education? As Kiana pointed out, we get less, and we're expected to do a whole lot more. Our opening year, 80% of our kids were 3 grade levels behind ELA and in math, and I got less money, and I got more accountability to get these kids where they need to be.
Repeat what you said. Most of your kids were how many grade levels
3
behind?
grade levels behind in both English language arts and in math. And I have less money and more accountability to get them to grade level.
So when a 6th grader came to you, they were really on a 3rd grade level.
I had a 5th grader come in at a kindergarten level this year. And so, but I get that same low level amount of money, same accountability, and I'm expected to get those kids to grade level.
I'm stuck. I had something else I wanted to say, but that right there, just the 5th grader came in at a kindergarten grade level.
And why do they come in at a kindergarten level in 5th grade?
We have the.
And I'm from the West Side, right? So we're not bashing, but I think what Robert's saying is facts. Like you said, less money, more accountability, more pressure.
For sure.
Right?
For sure. For sure.
So let's talk about, I want to talk about that budget piece for a minute. When you say you guys we'll come back to the question, but I just really want to kind of expand so that people paint the picture so people understand. When you say you guys get less money, the district's money comes from where? Most traditional school districts' money comes from where? Anybody know?
So there's a combination of how it works in the state of Indiana. There's per pupil funding, as we talked about. So those dollars follow the student, and that there's a complexity index that they say most economists can't even understand, which is a whole problem because I don't know how you have choice if you really can't educate parents on how things work if it's too, as a quote, complicated to explain. But when it comes to like property tax money, none of that goes to charters. And so I think if more parents knew that, they'd be enraged to know that they pay taxes, but that money only goes to the district. So actually to be honest, when students leave the district to go to charter schools, that property tax money is still there. So in a sense, they're getting a cut of the money still, if that makes sense.
Right. Another piece that I think is the facilities cost. So I believe everybody at this table is in a private facility. I don't think any of us are in IPS buildings.
Correct.
So that means in addition to whatever cost.
Kind of.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But in addition to the cost that we pay to educate our students on the per pupil funding, formula, we also have to pay rent, facilities, janitorial, transportation. None of those things are provided to charter schools, so we have to rely heavily on philanthropy in our early years, and then once we become sustainable on our own, we just have to make better financial decisions in order to educate kids at an equal or higher rate than what's happening in our traditional district schools. And I think that's something that parents don't always recognize.
Right. And so that's what I wanted to highlight in terms of the disparity with like you said, you got to go out and raise money for your school to keep the doors open. Right. You know, I sat on a innovation school board, and that's what Shy has to. You have to go out and raise money, and people don't understand that. It's different. You don't have that per pupil coming in and the property tax coming in. If you don't raise money, your school's not open.
I want to add
to a degree.
I want to add the referendum money to that too, because charters at this point do not have access to that money that, again, hits a lot of families.
So you guys are expected to, as you said, educate kids with way less money than what the traditional public school receives.
Correct.
So the argument that you're taking money, to me, is a non-valid argument because you're expected to do more with less.
Yeah, because so we have to, our primary goal is to educate children, make sure they're on grade level. A traditional school has the same priority. However, they don't have the priority of keeping the lights on. And so to the point of raising money and being sustainable, we got to keep the lights on and educate the children that are 2-3 grade levels behind and get them a grade level. And then, but then you're spending time, you got to make sure you make budget. You got to make sure you have the amount of kids to hit the numbers to keep your building open and to pay teachers and to also be competitive with paying teachers. Yep. So you're probably doing it with, I won't say a lesser quality of teacher, but probably not a skillful teacher. So then you're also coaching the teacher and possibly teaching the teacher. Right? They're trying to. So it's so many other variables where these district schools have all these resources or more resources than we have. But yeah, we're taking money from you. But we wouldn't be here if you were doing right by children.
Yeah, I was going to go back to that point. So the name of the show is Let's Go There with Cassandra. So we're going to go there today. And there's no bash to our district schools. There's no bash to, our IPS district. There's no bash to Wayne. But we got to have this conversation. Because until we start being open and honest about where we are, we're going to continue to fail our kids. Like, nobody wants to have the conversation that, unfortunately, the districts are failing our school. And that is across the board. That's just not IPS. That's Wayne Township. That's Franklin Township. That's Lawrence Township. That's Avon. I mean, the reality of it is, yes, their students are doing better, black and brown students, but they're not doing that great.
Who's doing better?
When I see those gaps.
I just want to clarify what you mean by that, Cassandra.
Well, there is the perception that our students go to different townships and they perform better academically.
It is not true, and I wish
that's why I want
parents
to have this
understood
conversation.
that.
That's why I want to have this conversation.
As a high school leader,
Yes.
one of the things that I've been most frustrated about is the achievement gap in our area, and I think people don't have that open and honest conversation. So many students, I'm going to Washington Township. Why? Because no bash. But right now, Washington Township at the high school level for sure is not serving black and brown children well, and the data shows it. This is an opinion. It's not my perspective on things. There is true data that shows that a black or brown student that attends Washington Township is not getting the same or equal education that their white affluent counterparts are getting. That's a fact, and the experiences that I've had with close friends whose kids have attended Washington Township in recent years. I know everybody from Indy want to go back to the throwback years when Washington Township was the bomb and they learned so much and look how great they turned out. That's not what's happening now. We had a young man recently who was applying for colleges, Morehouse being one of them. They didn't even send his transcripts accurately. They sent a transcript that had no math classes on it. This is a true story, fact. There's documentation, emails gone to the superintendent. The principal wouldn't even meet with the parent. That's how disparaging it was. It's a bad situation, and I think that we have to highlight that black and brown kids are not getting what they need to get in all of our township schools.
And you know
So
what
that-
Brownsburg is the only place
No,
that don't
and
have a
you're
killer
right.
achievement
So
gap.
sitting from this perspective, I got to show both sides, right? So one would argue your point of what you said. The flip side is that, well, how well are they doing in charters? That would be the argument, right? So the flip side would be if they're not doing well in townships, but how well are they doing in charters? That's the argument that I hear is that charters are not doing that well.
I'd compare Tinley Collegiate's ACT or SAT score to the average ACT or SAT score at Washington Township any day, and I bet my money on Tinley.
Yep. I mean,
Well,
thank you. That's true. And I think another piece that, and I got to go back to this about, the families also that are getting screwed over by this whole debate. What about our families that have scholars that are special education?
yes.
Right? So those townships, some of the townships who do wrong by those children, who have all the money to support them, then we get them with the less resources to try to educate them, right? And I think you said it, we take all students, no matter what, right? But we're lacking in funding in that as well to support those students.
Now I'm gonna push back on you too, David.
Okay.
That's just what I do, right? Got to have this conversation. So we all know that back in the day, Tinley had a history of being a zero tolerance school and kicking out those students who they felt like were not the ideal student.
Did we kick
right?
them out?
Well, I'm just saying.
I don't think we kicked them
you
out.
did. You
In what way?
Well, let me tell you this. I got a personal story to share
Okay.
about this. I have a nephew who ended up at Marshall School because of this situation.
Okay.
Every other day he was getting in trouble. Now I ain't saying he's a poster child. Marshall knows that. But
Right.
but he was getting in trouble every other day, suspended. I'm like, damn, he just got to the damn school and already he done spent 3 weeks out of school. Like, for little stupid stuff, right? So let me finish my story.
I will.
So we call a meeting with the assistant principal, who was a leader of color, and the principal who was not, who I know from another encounter, but she's going to remain nameless.
Fair
She's
enough.
no longer there. And so we have this meeting, and the assistant principal's like, oh, we really want him here. And you know what my response was?
What?
No, the fuck you don't. Because if you did, you would not be suspending him every other damn day. That was my response. So, no, you don't really want him here. And my response to her was, why are you here? You are a figurehead. You telling me what the handbook says and this, that, and the third, but you're not doing anything to mediate this situation. Yeah. It should not automatically go to suspension for every little thing that he's doing.
Was he in elementary school?
No, he was
middle school.
Middle school.
So,
he was in middle school.
Right. So
don't tell me that they ain't, because they are. So we end up pulling him out and putting him into Marshall School,
right,
where he did a lot better. He still had issues, but they were willing to take the time to figure out what was going on with him outside of academically, and we discovered there was a lot going on, and so they worked with him.
Right. So I'll say this to
Sorry, I had to
No, you
cuss,
good.
but that's what I told him.
You
like,
good.
no, you don't.
Right. So, Tinley, that's not the motto, and I can't speak for